Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic 90s nerds to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, but plenty of stuff in between. Today's video, however, is another horror-themed video, and we'll be talking specifically about horror books today, because I'll be doing my March reading wrap-up, and I'm really excited because I freaking read a lot of great books in March. Spoiler alert, this month I had 4 5-star rated books. I am not someone who just gives out 5 stars willy-nilly, but it just so happens I'm reading freaking great books. And when we come back right after this short intro, we'll talk about those great books. So see you back here in just a second. Welcome back, guys! Alright, let's talk about the March reads! I'm so pumped because, like I said, I had a lot of great reads. Alright, starting off with the first one, I do not have a physical copy, unfortunately, but that book is I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and oh my god, this was a wild ride. I read it in basically, I think one sitting, if I remember correctly, like on the first day of March. I was so excited to read this book. I heard many things about it, mostly good things from a lot of people. And I just didn't know what to expect because I really knew nothing about the story. So I went in a little bit blind, and I think that's the way you guys should go in. So I'm not going to tell you basically anything about this book except that it's a girlfriend and a boyfriend taking a car trip to see the boyfriend's parents. And stuff happens, and that's it. I'm not going to tell you a detail about it besides that, because I think that's the best way to just go into this book if you haven't already read it. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it a 5-star rating. Now, I will say, you know, it was quite a journey. Like, sometimes you felt like maybe you had to really think and, like, you know, just be in the moment and get there when you get there, like, you know, towards the end of the book. So you just got to stick with the book. I personally did not ever feel bored while reading. I felt like something was amiss and off the whole time, and something was like eerie just underneath the surface, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was, and that's what really made it an effective horror book for me. And so that is why I rated it 5 freaking stars, bitch! Because one, like I said, I read it in, I think, just one sitting. I couldn't put it down. It was really entertaining. I just wanted to see what happened, and so I very rarely have that experience with a book, but in the last 2 months, I gotta say, I've had that experience a few times, and I think it's just because I'm picking really great books that are notoriously pretty good, that I just haven't gotten to before now. So now I'm getting to them, and I'm having these great experiences, so it's been wonderful. So yeah, started off the month, because that was my first read of March, I started off the month with a bang because of I'm Thinking of Ending Things. So thank you, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, because you were very enjoyable to read. Next book we're going to discuss is The Time Watchers, and this is an advanced reading copy very kindly provided to me by Robbie Miles, the author, who is flippin' awesome and amazing. And if you're not following him on Instagram, you really should be, because he likes awesome old school nostalgia things like Goosebumps, just like I do, hence I just want to show you my Goosebump earrings. I was gonna say, I like old school things, hence why I'm wearing these Goosebump earrings. I hope they're not too shiny. But yes, they're supposed to be like these translucent G's. It's hard to see them. It's hard to focus. But anyway, I really like these a lot. Anyway, Robbie likes the same type of things as me in terms of old school stuff. He also likes Are You Afraid of the Dark, the TV show. We were talking about that on Instagram. So yes, I will say I was given this copy to review. So I will get that right out there, and I do talk to Robbie and consider him a friend. However, that did not affect my rating. My rating is going to be a 4.5-star rating, and I'm going to round it up for Goodreads. I have not written my official review yet, but this book is so cute. If you like middle grade reads, not all adults do, or if you have a kid of your own, I would say definitely pick this up. It has Halloween vibes to the max. We're talking about fall time, you know, in general, but it takes place on Halloween weekend, and over Halloween as well, specifically. And it's marvelous. And yes, it's got like this nostalgic feel, even though it's set in modern times, but really the focus of the story is a group of friends, and friendship is like really at the forefront of the entire story. And, you know, the lengths that friends will go to take care of each other and to help each other out and why friendship's so important, and it's just really, really lovely. But it's got a cute story behind that too, and a creepy story, and it's got ooey gooey parts in it, like my friend Elizabeth Sagewood likes to say. I love how she says ooey gooey. She uses that to describe like stuff when it's like gross stuff, like, oh, this guy has got ooze coming out of him, whatever. She uses that to describe those types of scenes in books. But this had a little bit of that, but it also had heart, and it had a bigger message. And so I totally recommend it. And before we move on, I don't want to forget to highlight the magnificent cover. It screams Halloween, which is appropriate. As I said, parts of the story do take place on Halloween and Halloween weekend in general, and it's just a lot of fun. I do suggest that you guys give this a chance if you like middle grade or know anyone who does. And it's available right now on Amazon. So what are you waiting for? I'll link it below. And why not support Robbie? He's a good guy and he's a talented author. So yes, support him. And thank you so much, Robbie, for this advanced reading copy. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Rats by James Herbert, a book I felt like I really needed to read for a very long time. And by the way, since I'm talking about books I felt like I needed to read, the whole theme of my March TBR was must-read March. And what I really mean by that is I wanted to read books in March that I felt like I was lacking in not having read. I wanted to read books that I felt like I was behind on reading versus everyone else. Books that a lot of people have already read and raved about and talked about. And then other reads were just personal must-reads that, in my opinion, I just really wanted to get to for a while. It might not be a very popular title that a lot of people have read, but it was a book that I wanted to read that I had not yet read. So that's the two ways I mean must-read March. That's what I mean by must-read. This is one of those that I considered a must-read for me personally. I love animal attack books, and this is one of the books that helped birth the whole animal attack subgenre. The other book you could probably attribute that birth of the subgenre to is the book Jaws by Peter Benchley, which I did read way back when in high school. And newsflash, and spoiler I guess, but not really, it's not as good as the movie. The movie is one of the greatest movies of all time, one of my favorite all-time movies, period. It's so good. I've seen Jaws like 150 times, maybe more. I love that movie so much. I could quote it. It's just a comfort movie for me. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. Rightfully so. It's so well made. It's so marvelous. And they just don't make movies like that anymore. They really don't. So I was excited to get to The Rats because I heard The Rats, unlike Jaws the book, I heard The Rats was actually decent and good and an entertaining animal attack book. And so I went into it with pretty high expectations because I have really had some big success with enjoying other animal attack books. Not Jaws, because I already mentioned I didn't really enjoy that super a lot. It was kind of boring. I'm glad I read it because I think it is like kind of a necessary read. But other books like The Nest by Gregory A. Douglas, which I reviewed on my channel, I'll link that review below. I quote a lot of lines from the book. Oh, I love that book so much. It is so brutal and it's almost like poetic in a way. So that always sticks out in my mind when I talk about animal attack books. Like that comes up right away as like my favorite one. But I also have another favorite called Hellhound by Ken Greenhall, which is really just dealing with one animal, and it's a killer canine named Baxter, and he's a freaking ass. Baxter's a bitch in a bad way. I usually say bitch in a nice way. Like on my channel, I say that word all the time. So if you're new here, you might not know it's like a term of endearment that I use. But Baxter is that in a bad way. He is not a cool pup at all. He's not friendly, he's not nice, but it was a blast reading about him and reading really his inner thoughts, because the whole point of the book is that you get the dog's point of view. So you're reading the dog's thoughts. You're also getting the point of view of other characters as well, but it's very fascinating. Ken Greenhall did a great job at writing as a dog. I mean, it was very surprising how you really felt like you were reading the mind of a canine. So yeah, I was like, okay, how could The Rats fail, right? How could it fail? So I was expecting this to knock it out of the park. I really had high expectations, and that is probably the problem. When you go into a book and you have high expectations, a lot of times you are setting yourself up to be disappointed. Now, I'm not saying this isn't good. It just isn't to the level of The Nest, in my opinion. And that's just my opinion. You guys could disagree, and that's fine. I just saw a rave review of The Rats on Instagram recently, and so I totally understand anyone who like treasures and loves this book. And I do think it's fun, and it definitely did have gruesome and gory parts, and it had some characters that I was trying to get invested in and that I found mildly entertaining. It just wasn't The Nest, which I thought that The Nest brought the carnage to a whole new level. Also, I just so happened to read a middle grade book called Rats by, I think it was Paul Zindel, is that his name? That was recommended to me well, not just to me personally, it was recommended off of Cameron Library Macabre's YouTube channel on one of his bookshelf tours, and he was like, this is gruesome and crazy, and it's a middle grade book. So I read the book, and I think it was last year, and oh my god, that's actually more brutal than this book. I think there were some scenes in Rats, the middle grade version, that was more insane than The Rats by James Herbert, which is an adult book. So to me, because of those comparisons, I did not rate this as highly as I probably would have had I not read any other Animal Attack book ever. And I'm sure this was very brutal for the time. This was written in like 1974, I think, originally. Yeah, 1974. So this edition's from 1975, and it's all beat up and terrible looking. As you guys can see, look, it's all scuffed up and stuff. I actually, in my agenda, rated this higher than I think I'm gonna really rate it. So in my agenda, I write down all my ratings, and for this, I wrote down a 4-star rating. However, I think I'm gonna make the decision right here and right now to change it. I think I'm gonna change it to a 3.5-star rating, and I'm gonna round it up for Goodreads when I do rate it on Goodreads. So yes, officially a 3.5. I'm gonna have to, I don't know, it sucks. I'm gonna have to scratch it out and make my freaking nice little page look all messy on my agenda page, but that's okay. Yes, 3.5 stars, enjoyable, but I think there are better Animal Attack stories out there, personally. Next up, I read The Langoliers by Stephen King, and I read this for my Year of King reading project with my good friend Kat, who often makes appearances on my channel. We have lots of book chats together on here, and we also have lots of movie chats, and that's going to start back up very soon. We're going to be doing a zombie movie marathon and book readathon next month in May, and so that's going to kick off very soon, and we're going to have like a chat about all we read and watched at the end, probably the beginning of June, but like after everything's over is what I mean, at the end of everything. But yeah, every month we chat about a King book or story and the accompanying adaptation. So not only did we talk about The Langoliers, we also talked about the adaptation, The Langoliers, which is a made-for-TV movie, and it's so bad, and it's so cheesy, and it's so amazing. And we talked about this and the movie for like an hour on my YouTube channel on a live stream. So I will link that stream down below. This was so enjoyable, but I honestly think I liked it a lot more because I listened to this on audiobook, and the narrator was Willem Dafoe, and it was incredible. It was amazing. His rendition of the whole book, like his narration of certain characters, were just so much fun, and it was very well done. So I enjoyed the audiobook, and I think if I had just read it, as in, you know, read the text by itself, I think I probably would have given it a 3.5 like I gave The Rats, but because of the narration, I feel like it amped up my enjoyment, and so I'm gonna give it a 4-star rating, because yes, Willem Dafoe, you fiend, that was so enjoyable, and I definitely recommend, if you're gonna read it, definitely check out the audio, because I think it's a can't miss. If you're gonna read it anyway, just do the audio. It's so good. If you like audiobooks. If not, the story is still interesting, I will say. But I think Willem Dafoe just made it that much better. Next up, a book I do not have a physical copy of yet again. I read this from the library on my Kindle, and this is The Last House on Needless Street. And I gotta tell you, I knew nothing going in, even though I've watched people do wrap-ups where they've talked about it. The person who comes to mind right away is Elizabeth Sagewood. She couldn't wait for me to read it. She wanted to know what I thought about it. There are mixed reviews on this book. However, my feelings about this book are not mixed. I freaking love this book. I was surprised. I guessed one thing that unfolded. However, there are multiple things that transpire and pop up, and you're like, what? Things that you wouldn't guess. So I guessed one thing, but I didn't guess a whole bunch of other things, and I think it's best to go in just like I was talking about with I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I think the same thing for Last House on Needless Street. I think you should go in with hardly knowing anything. I think that truly is the best way. And so, even though I watched a whole bunch of reviews and wrap-ups which mentioned this book, I guess I didn't pay attention to the synopsis with people talking about it. I just paid attention to people's, like, opinions on it. For some reason, because of the book cover, there's like a cat in the middle of a street. There's 2 different covers, but the one that I know about the most is the one with this cat in front of a street. And I'm like, is this about like a witch who lives in, like, you know, like a street with this cat? I don't know, because, you know, I associate black cats with witches. I don't know. I just thought, and the title too is kind of misleading. The Last House on Needless Street. I just thought it was going to be like a little cozy horror story. I had no idea what it was really about. And I'm kind of glad. I just didn't have any preconceived notions. It was awesome. I love reading books like that because a lot of times I know too much at the beginning, and that could be a hindrance. In this case, I'm so glad I didn't know a lot, and that I kind of let everything kind of seep out of my brain and go away, that I did I know I heard things, but like, I guess it was gone. It just melted away out of me, out of my brain, as I said. So yeah, I gave it a 5-star rating yet again. So that is one of the 5 stars. So far I just named, throughout this whole video so far, I named 2 5-star rated books. I'm thinking of Ending Things and The Last House on Needless Street. And there are 2 more. Which ones will they be? We'll have to see. Very soon you'll find out. But yeah, I don't want to tell you guys too much. And I know that's kind of, I guess, a cop-out, but I think it actually saves you guys. It saves you a special experience, because I think sometimes we're apt to give away too many details in our reviews, and I am guilty of doing that sometimes too, but in this case, I'm not gonna do it. And unfortunately, I have a lot of books like that this month where I'm like, I shouldn't say too much. I'm not just talking about I'm thinking of Ending Things in this book. There's actually another book where I don't want to say too much about it, so we'll get there when we get there. But yeah, it just so happens it was a month of really strange books that people shouldn't know much about before they begin them. So yeah, Last House on Needless Street, Elizabeth, and everyone else watching, I really loved it, so I am so glad I got to it this month. Next up is an old school horror book that I read, and I really enjoyed it. So this is The Keepsake by Paul Husson, and as I said, it's an old school paperback from hell type of read. This was published in 1981. This is a first printing. This was published by Warner Books, as you can see on the spine there. Rough copy, my copy here, and this was amazing. And I think maybe it's because, I don't know why, I don't know if everyone would like it as much as me, and I have a whole reading vlog where I read this and did a whole bunch of other St. Patty's type of things. It was my St. Patrick's Day reading vlog, and I went to Irish parade in New Orleans. I did a whole bunch of stuff. I made Irish food for St. Patrick's Day, and I was reading this all the while. Why? Because this has to do with an Irish stone, that it was like kind of like an evil stone. And I don't want to say too much about this either, because I kind of go through it a lot in my vlog. But if you're new, the essential premise is it's this little stone, and this couple takes the stone as a souvenir from Ireland, where they just made a documentary about Ireland, and then they come back to where they live here in America, and they've got this stone, and then like weird things start to happen, and accidents start to befall people that they know, and it just becomes really suspicious that things are happening, and they have this stone, and more develops, but it was very thematic for St. Patrick's Day. Even though most of the book took place in America, a lot of it surrounded this stone, which was Irish in nature, and they talked about Irish lore a lot, and I thought that was great. And the very beginning, the prologue is set in Ireland way back in the day, like way back in the day, and I just thought it was so thematic, and I love being thematic. If you guys are new here, you might not know that, but now you know, because I'm telling you, I freaking love anything thematic. I will do a whole thing for St. Patrick's Day. I will do a whole bunch of holiday stuff that's thematic. So reading a thematic book for the holiday was a blast, and I'm so glad I did it. And yeah, I really liked the way that vlog came out, so if you guys haven't seen it, I do recommend it, and I'll link it below. And there's a lot of thoughts about this book in that vlog, so if you want to know more, or at least a little more, I talk about what I thought about it in there. And my official rating, and I think a lot of people might rate it like a 3.5 or a 4, but I'm actually rating this a 4.5 star rating. I'm gonna round it down for Goodreads to 4. But yeah, this was so much fun and perfect for the time I read it. Next up is another book that I don't have a physical copy of. Again, I read this from my library on my Kindle, and I thought this one was freaking brutal. This is Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Brite, and it was my first read by Poppy Z. Brite, and boy, was it nuts. And it will not be my last Poppy Z. Brite book either that I read. So anyway, this story is just wild. The basic premise is we have this serial killer who likes to kill boys, and we have this other killer who also happens to like to kill young boys. When I say young boys, I mean freaking young adult men. And this takes place during the AIDS crisis, and when there's like a lot of stigma about AIDS, and the 2 main characters are both gay, and so we're following them, and they not only like to kill these young men, they also like to be with these young men, if you know what I'm saying, like be with them after they're not alive. Yeah, it's crazy, it's nuts, and if you are not into graphic stuff in your books, do not read it. Like, do not read it. It is so graphic. Not only with the violence and the blood and the gore, but also with the sexuality in the book. Like, it's very extreme. I am so glad I read it because it was crazy. And not only was it crazy in terms of violence and extreme stuff, but also the great and wonderful New Orleans references. So a lot of the book takes place in New Orleans, one of the killers is actually from out of the country. The other one is from New Orleans and lives in New Orleans. And oh my god, all the references. Poppy Z. Brite did such a great job at naming so many things that are local here in New Orleans. That's where I'm from. If you guys are new and don't know, I live in New Orleans. Well, really, it's technically just outside of the city. Since I live here, I know enough to know that all these things that Poppy was talking about is accurate. All the little like references and allusions to the city. Oh, it was so awesome and marvelous to see all these little references. Of course, they had the generic references in there that were like, you know, Cafe Du Monde, beignets. People know about that. But it had like some subtle stuff that people wouldn't know about, like Schwegmann's, a store that doesn't exist anymore, DH Homes, all kinds of old school stuff that just isn't around anymore. And I really wish I would have saved my Kindle notes because the book got returned to the library before I got to send my notes to myself. So that sucks. Basically what you need to know going in, like I said, these two guys, it's almost like a weird horror romance in a way, but not really. Romance isn't the forefront of it, but these two killers are like,
hey, yo, you're like me.
And the other killer's like,
you're like me.
I like guys, dead bodies.
And the other guy's like,
yeah, look at this corpse. It's exquisite.
And the other guy's like,
yeah, it's exquisite. You're exquisite. Let's do some stuff and kill some dudes and more.
So it was kind of like that. It was like, whoa. It was pretty crazy. My favorite part of the book is how the two killers recognized like that subtle thing inside of them that made them who they were, like that difference that made them not normal, like the killer that they were. They both recognized it in each other without even really saying it. And I thought that was really a cool scene. And again, I'm not spoiling anything by saying that. That's basically like the back of the book tells you that they meet up and they're like,
yo, we both like to kill dudes, let's go!
And so that's what happens. I do recommend it. It was a great read. I didn't give it a 5-star rating. I did give it a 4-star rating. I was going to give it a 4.5, but then the more I thought about it wasn't as captivating to me as, you know, some of the other 5-star reads I had. Even the Keepsake just felt really easy to read, whereas parts of Exquisite Corpse felt really difficult to read. Not that I was bored, it was more like, oh my gosh, this scene here is difficult to read. I do have one little criticism, but I can't really go into it because it could be spoiler territory, potentially. It's essentially these two scenes in the book that I wish would have been flip-flopped so that there would have been some more tension and some more suspense. Alas, it was not ordered the way I wanted it to be. Again, though, overall, I really loved the book. I really loved the read. It was extreme. It was wonderful. If you like extreme horror and you have not read this, you need to get on it because it's right up your alley if you like that type of thing. If you don't, then stay away because it is pretty brutal. Like, there are some gross scenes with, like, you know, cutting and just very sickening stuff, but in like a great, awesome, macabre way. So yeah, I enjoyed it personally. Next up, I have The Troop by Nick Cutter. I freaking had a blast reading this book, and this was one of the official book club picks for my club, the Midnight Book Society, that I run here on my YouTube channel. It is public, it is open to everybody. We have a Discord, I will link it below, and that is where we all talk about the books we read. But in addition to that, I also have a live stream at the end of each month or the beginning of the next month after we've read the books. And I say books, plural, because usually we have 2 picks, and people can choose to read one, the other, or neither, or both, whichever, or whatever, because it's very free-flowing, and that is the whole point of the club. And usually I pick the top 2 books that got the most votes in the poll I put out on my YouTube community tab, and those are the books that are chosen for me to do live streams about. So The Troop came in first place for the month of March, and so that was our official book club read, and I did have a whole long live stream discussion of it, but it does contain spoilers. So if you've read the book already and you want to hear my very in-depth thoughts, then check out that stream. I love this. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. I thought it was so gross and sick, but in the best way, and it also had a lot of heart and emotion, and it had, really sad parts throughout it, but I think the sadness was warranted because this was a deeper story than just like gross out horror, because there was some gross stuff. So essentially the premise is there's this parasite, it's a worm, it's disgusting, it's terrible, and there's this troop of kids, like a Boy Scout troop essentially, and they're camping on this island. A guy infected with the worm gets out from where he was being held and arrives at the island. Soon after, people start getting infected. Who gets infected and who doesn't? You'll have to wait and see if you haven't read it already. And yeah, it is brutal. some of the descriptions of the stuff with the worm and what it does to people on the inside, it makes them really hungry, essentially. But yeah, you have to read it for yourself. But again, if you don't like gross stuff, kind of like with Exquisite Corpse, but in a different way. So Exquisite Corpse, there was a lot of sex and there was a lot of violence. This, it's more like there's a lot of body horror, specifically. There's also a lot of animal stuff going on in here. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's for every single person, but if you don't mind that type of horror, and if you don't mind that, plus it's got like an emotional bang, I think that makes it worth it, is the emotional part. So I do recommend it. Just, know what you're getting into, for sure. But yes, 5 stars from me, for sure. I only have 2 books left. One of the 2 is a 5-star rated book from me. The other is not. So which one is which? Which one are we about to talk about? Well, the one we're talking about next is The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks. Is this a 5-star? That's a drum roll. No, this is not my 5-star read. That's the last one that I have to talk about. But it was pretty decent, and I did give it a high rating. So I'm rating this one, I think I'm rating it, 4 stars. And I'm very glad I read it, because this is kind of notorious for being a disturbing book. And I had no idea what to expect. I knew it was about a younger person, I think they're a teenager, essentially, who is killed in the past and is kind of like a psychopath. And we're following his journey and feelings, and I didn't know what to expect, what was going to develop. Was there a story here, or was it just like a character examination? Well, stuff developed, and I think it's best not to know too much about this book, too. So that is a theme for March. There are at least 3 books where you shouldn't really know much going in. This is one of those books, for sure. I think you should just go in knowing it's about this killer guy and his psyche. So I will say there were parts that were slower to me, and that is why I didn't give it a 5 stars. There were parts that just dragged, and I think some people liked it. Like, our buddy read this with my friend Crystal over at Fiberartsy. I will link her channel below. She liked all these descriptions of the main character. He had all these rituals where he would go across the island that they lived on and would do certain things like every day. And she liked reading about the rituals, my friend Crystal. I thought that part was slow for me. Like, I would kind of skim. I was like, I don't care about what he's doing here. And I was like wanting more to happen in a quicker way. So, although the ending packed a punch and was crazy, and I was like, what the hell? I don't even know how to feel anymore about this book. The rest, I kind of struggled at points. However, I did think that there was a great overall message that was very intriguing and mind-boggling, and you were like, what? And so I can't really say much about it, unfortunately. I can't really tell you guys what I think the story is about and like the larger message about life and stuff, but it was a fascinating book once I finished it and I started to think and ruminate about it, and I even researched about it, like on Reddit, and there were some criticisms of the book, and I actually agree with a few of the criticisms as well, about, not knowing why things were done the way they were in the book, and not knowing why certain things happened, because there was like a very flimsy reason why certain things happened in the book, or this one particular thing. Anyway, I can't go into it. I wish I could, but I cannot without spoiling. So yes, 4 stars. Is it worth reading? Yes. I feel like it's kind of a must-read, and that's why I'm so glad I read it for my must-read month, because this is just something that I feel like you have to read to know what I'm talking about, for one, and just because I think it has a larger message it's trying to say. My friend Ollie told me that this is like required reading over in England, which is crazy. Not crazy bad, but just like, wow, there's no way this would be required reading here in America. There's no way. If you've read it, you know what I mean. I think this would be too controversial, like, completely to be required in school. So yeah, there's no way. But yeah, I'm giving it a 4 stars. I keep saying, yeah, I don't know why. It was good. However, just know that, for some people, there are some parts that are slower, especially if you're not into character-driven stories. I am. It's just that there was a lot of ritual stuff described, and I was like, come on, let's talk more about what's going on in the larger picture of things. And the last book I have to talk about is The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. And this is my final 5-star read. I teased that I had 4. This is the 4th 5-star. And although I rated it 5 stars, I do think this book is not for everyone. You have to know going in that this book is upsetting, disturbing, depressing, and really demoralizing in the sense that it kind of makes you feel down about the human race and human nature in general. However, I do feel like there is a flicker of hope in this. There's a character that is sympathetic and empathetic, and that, I think, makes a big difference. And so, overall, I do think that this is an important book to read, because I feel like it tells a story larger than the crime that it's based on. It's based on a real-life crime. So essentially, the premise of the story is this poor girl and her sister, they're stuck living with this aunt and their cousins. And the freaking aunt is a monster, honestly, in the book. And abuse follows and all this other stuff ensues. Then there's a kid next door, and he is kind of narrating the story from his point of view. He's an observer. He goes over there. He's friends with the girl's cousins. He's friends with this aunt who the two girls are staying with. And yeah, it's just a horrible story. The abuse documented in this book is heart-wrenching, is gut-punching in the worst way. But again, like I said, there is a bigger emotional message to this, and it's really well written. Jack Ketchum, this must have been such a hard book to write. I mean, there are a lot of terrible details, but I still think he handled it the best he could. And there was even a point where he went so far as to say, like, I'm not going to, he had the narrator say, technically, I'm not going to go further about this. I don't want to recall this even. So there was a point in the book that didn't even describe the terrible things that were going on, but there are a lot of terrible descriptions too that are kind of detailed at length, and that is the part that's hard to read. But again, I chose to read this because it was up for my book club vote, and I do consider this a must-read, but only for people who could handle it. And I felt like I could handle it, especially because I read a book called Let's Go Play at the Adamses, which is similar. They're actually both based on the same true story, unfortunately. The fact that it's even real, like I said, is so upsetting. The whole idea that this actually happened to a poor girl is so sad and heart-wrenching, as I said. Not to keep using the same words, but that's the best words to describe it. And so my book club picked this as one of the choices. It finished second in my poll, and I always do a stream for the top two, as I said. And so I'm going to have a stream about this actually tonight, the night I'm filming this wrap-up video today. So I will link the chat below, because by the time I upload this, it will already have happened. So I'm sure we'll go into crazy details, but there will be spoilers. So I want you guys to know that there will be more information about how I feel about the book. However, if you haven't read it, it's kind of silly to go and watch it because there'll be spoilers for you. So this is my abbreviated review with no spoilers for those of you who have not read this. Again, I can't necessarily say I recommend it, because it's a hard book to recommend in that it's an extreme subject matter and extreme terrible things happen in the book. However, I personally am glad to have read it because it will stay with me for a long time, and it was one of the most emotional books I've ever read. This one and Let's Go Play at the Adamses. I think one is more maddening than the other. They're both very emotional, though, in general, overall. So yeah, 5 stars. It was really well written, and honestly, I'd read anything by Jack Ketchum. If he could make a story about this terrible case and this horrific case work in a semi-tasteful way, which I do think it's as tasteful as it can be, and it does have an overall larger meaning than just what is going on, just the actual crime itself. I think there's a bigger story there about humanity and stuff. I feel like if Jack Ketchum could make this work, he could make anything work. Now, I know some of his other stuff is more, pulpy and kind of not as impactful and meaningful in terms of the emotion and the messages behind things. For instance, I would love to read Off Season, and I've heard great things about that, but that's more extreme. That's more just like, a regular horror book, not one that has like some kind of large overall impact type of deal. So yeah, I will read more by him in the future for sure, but for this time, guys, that's basically it for me. That was my whole wrap-up. I read 10 books. I guess you could say 9.5, because technically just to give you guys the honest truth, I finished The Rats by James Herbert on April 1st at like 7:10 a.m. I had 10 pages left, so I read the last 10 pages in April, but I am still counting The Rats as read in March. So 9.5 books read, 10 books, I don't know how you want to count it, but I'm counting it, I guess, as 10 full books read in March. It was a great reading month overall. 4 5-star freaking books. That's crazy. I can't believe I had that many 5-star reads. So overall, very successful, and I'm hoping April will be just as successful. Want to thank you guys for spending the time with me. I know my videos are long. This is no different, but I appreciate it very much. Leave a like if you're so inclined, because it really does help my channel grow, and so does leaving a comment. Even if you have nothing to say, even just a smiley face or a pumpkin or an orange heart. I love orange hearts. So any of those would really help out, and that would be awesome. I also want to send an extra thank you to those of you who are participating with me in my April readathon and watchathon, which is called Old School April. I really appreciate anyone who is joining in. It's been so much fun, and I can't wait to do my April wrap-up once the month is over, because so far it's been a blast to read and watch so many old school things. But as I teased, for this time, that is it for me. Till next time, you guys know what you can do. I say it every video. Keep on killing it. Bye, guys.